Welcome to Twisted Truths, where betrayal meets brutal payback, and where the most unexpected twists expose what people are really capable of. This story isn't just shocking, it's personal. My name is Paul Langston. I'm 34. I work in procurement, agricultural equipment, nothing glamorous, but it pays well, and I've built a comfortable life. After years of being the dependable son, I finally got offered something big, a promotion with our European division, based in Berlin. And before I moved halfway across the world, I wanted to give my parents one unforgettable gift. A week in New Zealand. First-class flights. 5-star vineyard lodges. A helicopter over the fjords. It wasn't just a vacation. It was a tribute. A thank you. A memory. My mom, Elaine, had always dreamed of New Zealand. Collected brochures. Talked about hot springs and sheep-covered hills like they were fantasies. My dad, Frank, was the history buff. I even booked them a guided Maori cultural experience because he'd mentioned that once during a random History Channel binge. I spent 3 months planning it. Every detail. Every tour. I spent nearly $16,000. My vacation days. My energy. And then, the morning of their flight, I pulled up to their house at 4 a.m. to drive them to the airport, and my uncle Leon walked out the front door. Leon. 57. Jobless. Living in their basement for 3 years now. Always had a new story, about being misunderstood, unlucky, overqualified. Never stuck with a job. Always had a reason. Always had a new plan. I had stopped believing them 5 years ago. When I saw him wheeling a duffel bag toward my trunk, I actually thought maybe he was going somewhere else. Until my mom gave me a soft, apologetic smile. That smile that always came right before she dropped bad news like it was a soufflé. "There's been a change of plans," she said. Leon grinned like he'd won something. My dad walked over, hand on his shoulder like they were two old friends about to head off to war. "Your uncle's been down lately. We thought this trip might lift his spirits." I remember gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles cracked. "What do you mean?" I asked. "We switched the ticket. Leon's going with us," my mom said. She might as well have said, "You're just the driver now." They'd used my gift, and given it to him. No apology. No explanation. No warning. Just the assumption that I'd understand. That I'd be fine with it. That, as always, I'd be the son who smiled and said, "It's okay." He needed it more. I drove them to the airport in silence. Leon talked the entire time, about the wine, the hot springs, how he'd never been to the southern hemisphere. My parents nodded along like everything was normal. At the drop-off curb, I helped them with their bags. My mom turned and waved before disappearing into the terminal. My dad didn't even look back. I sat in my truck afterward, staring at the empty curb. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I just froze. I had planned this as my last real moment with them before I left the country. I thought I was creating a memory. Instead, I was just the guy who made it possible for someone else. And they didn't even flinch. The house was too quiet when I got back. I poured myself a drink at 7 a.m. because if there was ever a time to break that rule, it was now. I didn't sleep. I didn't shower. I just sat at the kitchen table staring at the screen, at all the confirmation emails, the boutique hotels I'd researched, the prepaid car rental, the spa appointments I'd coordinated around their food tours. Gone. Given away. I kept replaying that moment in the driveway. My mom wheeling the bag out with that look. My dad speaking in that unshakable tone, like his decision was carved in stone. I'd grown used to being the forgotten son, the "he's got it handled" guy. The one who didn't need help. Who showed up on time. Paid his own way. Covered the check without asking. Leon didn't have to be dependable. He just had to look sad. Tired. Lost. And my parents would move heaven and earth to help him. When Leon's truck broke down last year, guess who bought him a new alternator? Me. When he missed rent and got kicked out of yet another place, guess who showed up with moving boxes? Me. But when it came time for something meaningful, for something that actually meant something, guess who got left out? Me. I had wanted that trip to be a memory. A send-off before Berlin. A full-circle moment of gratitude for two people who raised me right. And instead, they gave it away like a spare umbrella. I didn't go to work that day. I didn't tell anyone what happened. I just kept thinking, what kind of parents look their son in the face, shrug, and say, your unemployed uncle needs this more than you do? I felt humiliated. Powerless. Betrayed. Worse, I realized this wasn't a one-off. This was the pattern. This was the culmination of a lifetime of being second to Leon's chaos. I remembered my high school graduation. Leon showed up late, drunk, and got into a shouting match with my dad in the parking lot. Nobody even asked me how I felt. They spent the rest of the day fussing over him. At my first job out of college, Leon borrowed my car for a week. Said he needed it for interviews. I found out later he never even left town. Even last year, he accidentally opened a credit card in my name. Claimed he thought it was a joint application my mom signed for. My parents made excuses for him. Every time, I swallowed it. Because I was the reliable one. Because I was the easy one to sacrifice. And that's the sick part. They knew I'd take it. That I'd never raise my voice. Never push back. That's why it was so easy for them to take my gift, my months of planning, and hand it over to the man who has never followed through on a single promise in his life. I felt used. Not just dismissed, but exploited. That morning I realized something awful. If I hadn't planned the trip at all, they probably wouldn't have gone. But since I did the work, paid the money, made it real. It was just easier to take it from me than to do it themselves. And if I could be discarded so easily, after all I had done for them, what was I even worth to them? I started to wonder if maybe Leon wasn't the only one using them. Maybe they had been using me all along. The realization hit like a gut punch. But the worst part wasn't the betrayal. It was that they didn't even feel guilty. I sat at my kitchen table with the blinds half open and the light from my laptop screen casting long shadows across the counter. The house was still, but my mind was anything but. At first, I just wanted to see how much I could cancel. I opened the hotel portal. Clicked Manage Reservation. And there it was. Cancel. Full refund. No penalty. I hesitated. Then I clicked it. Hawke's Bay Lodge, gone. Next, the Vineyards Suite in Queenstown. Cancelled. Rotorua Spa Retreat. Gone too. Then the helicopter tour. The car rental. The Maori cultural visit. All wiped out, one by one. Each click was its own kind of therapy. Not revenge. Not yet. But a reclaiming of something that had been taken from me without my consent. They hadn't even asked me if it was okay. They just decided. So I decided too. But when I reached the end, I didn't feel relief. I felt numb. It still wasn't enough. They were already on the flight. They'd still land in Auckland. And Leon would still walk into a country I paid for him to visit. That's when I remembered something. A joke. Leon had mentioned at Christmas how lucky he was that no one checked background stuff at airports. Wouldn't be great if New Zealand found my traffic warrants, he'd laughed. I had rolled my eyes at the time. But now. That joke sat differently. I opened a new browser window and typed, New Zealand Immigration Customs tip line. It exists. I read it twice. Then I clicked. There was a form. For flagging travelers with potential legal issues. Nothing fake. Just facts. I typed. United States citizen. Male. Date of birth, June 8, 1967. Full name, Leon Everett Langston. Current flight, I entered their Air New Zealand itinerary, which I'd booked. Known to have outstanding legal matters involving court summons and unpaid fines in the state of Colorado. I attached a link to the court records. They were public. I didn't lie. I didn't embellish. I just told the truth. The kind of truth my parents always ignored because Leon made them feel needed. Because playing savior to a man-child fed some broken part of their parenting ego. I sent the message. It was 10:53 p.m. I sat back in my chair and waited. And as I did, something inside me settled. No yelling. No tantrum. Just action. Let them finally deal with the consequences of enabling him. Let them see what it felt like to trust Leon and have it blow up in their face. I didn't owe them peace anymore. They had cashed that in a moment. They replaced me with the man who'd leeched off them for over a decade. This wasn't petty. This was clarity. I had tried to give them a memory. They gave it to a parasite. And now the parasite was heading straight into customs, while holding an invisible red flag above his head. I didn't sleep that night. Not because of nerves. Not guilt. But because, for the first time in years, I felt free. Something inside me had snapped loose. Or maybe it had finally clicked into place. This wasn't about punishing my parents. I still loved them. That was the cruel part. Love wasn't the problem. It was what they did with that love. They wielded it like a broom, sweeping up Leon's endless messes and leaving mine untouched, unacknowledged. At 3 a.m., I opened a new tab. Rerouted my flight to Berlin. I was supposed to leave in 4 weeks. But now, I needed to go early. To get away. To start fresh, not just professionally, but emotionally. My supervisor had already said, if you need to accelerate the move, just say the word. So I did. I emailed her, family situation. Can I start next week instead? She replied at 6:14 a.m., absolutely. Berlin would love to have you early. By then, I was showered and dressed. I even ironed a shirt. Not because I needed to, but because I could. Because I chose to. That morning, just as I was preparing to drive over to my office to wrap up my Denver paperwork, my phone rang. International number. I didn't answer. It rang again 15 minutes later. I let it go to voicemail. At 7:03 a.m., it rang again. I finally picked up. My dad's voice was thin. Shaky. I'd only heard that tone once before, when my grandmother passed. Paul, he said. We're in Auckland. There's been a situation. I sipped my coffee. What kind of situation? It's Leon. Immigration flagged something. Pulled him aside. What for? They say he has an unresolved court matter in Colorado. Well, I said, stretching my back, doesn't he? My dad didn't answer that. Instead, he muttered, we've been sitting in customs for over 2 hours. Your mother is frantic. We don't know if they'll even let him into the country. Ha, I said. Dead silence. Then, also, Paul, the hotel says our reservation was cancelled. Same with the rental car. The helicopter tour. It's like, everything just vanished. That's awful, I said. Do you know what's going on? Sounds like some kind of glitch. Weird how that happens, huh? He sighed. Your mother's crying. I didn't respond. She wanted this trip so badly. Yeah, I said, voice cool. That's why I spent 3 months planning it for her. The silence on the other end turned heavy. Paul, he said, voice barely above a whisper, did you do something? I leaned back in my chair, watching the sun creep across the hardwood floor. You gave my trip to Leon. You never asked. Never even told me. Just stood there in the driveway like it was normal. He needed this. No. You needed to feel like you were saving someone again. And Mom, God bless her, she can't say no to guilt. Another pause. I didn't sabotage anything, I lied. I just stepped back, and let your decisions unravel themselves. Paul, please. You wanted Leon to have the trip. Now you have it, with all the chaos he brings. I ended the call before he could reply. That afternoon, I called a storage company to pick up my final boxes. I listed my car for lease. Updated my renters with a new property manager contact. And I booked my final flight to Berlin for Sunday morning. If they could rewrite the rules of the trip last minute, so could I. I was done cleaning up their messes. This time, they'd clean up after Leon. By the time Sunday rolled around, I had packed everything I needed for Berlin into 2 large suitcases and 1 carry-on. I gave away the rest. No sentimental attachments. No last-minute regrets. I didn't drive past my parents' house on the way to the airport. I didn't need to. Boyd, sorry, Leon, had already come by. He'd shown up on my doorstep the night before, looking like a man who'd been chewed up and spit out by international customs. Wrinkled travel clothes, bags under his eyes, breath stale with recycled plain air. They sent us back, he said, not even a hello. I figured. Immigration flagged me. Someone sent them my record. He paused. Real specific stuff too. Legal case numbers. Outstanding fines. Even my flight info. That's rough. You gonna lie to my face, Paul? I raised an eyebrow. About what? You did this. You tanked your own parents' trip just to make a point. No, I said coolly. I didn't tank their trip. They did that the moment they gave it to you. Leon stepped closer, like his height would somehow intimidate me. It didn't. I didn't ask them to do that, he growled. No, you just moped and dropped enough pity crumbs to let them convince themselves it was their idea. Classic Leon move. Your mom cried the entire way home. She should cry. Maybe she'll finally understand what disappointment feels like. Leon's face contorted. You're punishing the wrong people. No. I'm not punishing anyone. I just stopped protecting people from their own choices. He opened his mouth to respond, but I shut the door on him. Quietly. Deliberately. And I slept like a rock. Now, standing at the gate in Denver International, watching people shuffle into boarding lines, I felt a strange mix of adrenaline and calm. For the first time in years, I wasn't carrying guilt. Or obligation. Or someone else's emotional baggage. My phone buzzed. Voicemail from my dad. I deleted it. Then another, text from Mom. Please call us. We don't understand what happened. We feel awful. Too late. I boarded my flight. Found my seat. Buckled in. As the plane ascended above the Rockies, I looked out the window at the shrinking city below. Somewhere down there, my parents were sitting in their too-quiet house, trying to make sense of a trip that evaporated in their hands. No spa treatments. No vineyard lodges. No Maori tours. Just Leon. Their golden burden. Who now couldn't even leave the country. Maybe now they'd realize who had really been carrying the family this whole time. Berlin was cold in the way Denver never managed to be, old, stone, and unapologetic. But it suited me. Every day was a clean slate. A new routine. A new skyline. No one knew me here as Frank and Elaine's son or Leon's nephew. I was just Paul. And that anonymity was liberating. I threw myself into work, client negotiations, factory visits, equipment inspections. My co-workers were sharp, my supervisor liked my decisiveness, and my apartment overlooked a cobblestone square with a bakery that made the best espresso I'd ever tasted. I thought I'd feel alone. But what I felt was untethered. And free. 3 weeks passed. Then, during a lunch break, my phone rang. Another international number. I stared at it. Let it buzz once. Twice. On the third ring, I picked up. Hello. Paul. My mother's voice. Clearer than I expected. Steadier. Hi, sweetheart. I braced. Hey. We need to tell you something. I waited. She took a breath. We asked Leon to move out. I blinked. What? Last week. Your father found out he'd been using our credit card. Online orders, electronics, new clothes, about $1,500. I swallowed slowly. And? When we confronted him, he got defensive. Said he was just getting ahead of Christmas shopping. Then he said, you had turned us against him. That you'd been manipulating us. I almost laughed. Of course he did. But this time, your father didn't defend him. I leaned back in my chair. No. No. He looked Leon dead in the eye and said, maybe we should have turned against you a long time ago. She paused. We gave him 30 days to find another place. He's staying with Kevin now. Kevin. The same high school friend who once hosted Leon for 2 weeks and had to change all his Wi-Fi passwords afterward. How do you feel? I asked. She didn't hesitate. Relieved. And embarrassed. We should have seen it years ago. I said nothing. You tried to show us, she added. And we didn't listen. A pause. Then she asked, softly, are you ever coming home? I don't know, I said truthfully. It depends on whether the home I remember ever really existed, or if I just made excuses for it. There was silence on the line. Then she said something I didn't expect. We want to try again. But this time, you lead. My throat tightened. Put Dad on. She passed the phone. Paul, my father's voice came through, rough but warmer. I owe you a real apology. You don't owe me anything, I replied flatly. No, I do. I took your gift and gave it away like it didn't matter. You had every right to be angry. I wasn't angry, I said. I was done. He sighed. I think. I needed to see what Leon does when there's no one left to make excuses. And I needed to see what you do when we're not looking. I didn't respond. After a moment, he added, Elaine and I want to take that New Zealand trip. The real one. The one you planned. With you. When you can take vacation. For a second, I just stared out the window at the people walking by in coats and scarves. You sure you don't want to bring Leon? I said, and immediately regretted the bitterness in my voice. No, he said without hesitation. This time, it's just us. 6 months later, I landed back in Denver for the first time. Not for business. Not for duty. For Christmas. My parents met me at arrivals. They looked lighter. My mom held out a steaming to-go cup of peppermint coffee, just like she used to when I came home from college. My dad gave me a firm hug. No words. Just a squeeze that said more than apologies ever could. The car ride was full of questions, about Berlin, about my job, about the street festivals and architecture. But none about Leon. Not until I asked. How's he doing? They exchanged a look. Working, my dad said. Kevin got him a job in construction. He sent us a text asking to come for Christmas, my mom added. Will he? No, she said firmly. We told him this year is for rebuilding something we let fall apart. That evening, we sat in the living room, thumbing through old photo albums. Family BBQs. My graduation. My dad's 50th, Leon was in a lot of those photos, always with a drink in hand, always in the center, always loud. But in every photo, I was in the background. Smiling quietly. Forgettable. You know what we want to do, my mom said suddenly. What? Take that trip to New Zealand. The one you planned. You don't have to, I said softly. We want to, my dad said, cutting in. With you. The way it should have been. I didn't answer right away. I looked around the house, quiet now, no Leon in the basement. No tension. Just stillness. A new chapter. I'd like that, I said. That night, I walked past the guest room, Leon's old room. It was spotless. Empty. The air was still. My mom had folded new sheets on the bed. No clutter. Just space. Like the house was breathing again. Like maybe, so was I. In the end, truth has a way of surfacing, even if it comes twisted through pain and betrayal. As one wise voice once said, sometimes your greatest enemy was once your closest ally. If this story struck a chord with you, let us know in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe, share, and spread the word, because justice deserves to be heard.